Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our latest Meet the Management. My name's Marc Ashton, and today we are talking about the subject of cybersecurity and the human element. To help us unpack this topic, I'm joined by Suran Moodley, Group Managing Executive at Ariston Global. Maybe just to set the scene and talk a little bit about credentials, maybe you can just tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what your professional background is.
I'm the group managing exec at Ariston Global. Prior to, becoming an entrepreneur, which I've done for the last 10 years, I've been involved in large corporates, predominantly in the HR and sometimes in the tech space. I've got a background in psychology, industrial psychology, sociology, and we predominantly focus on assisting entrepreneurs and a few large corporates with specialist HR solutions, accounting, tax, payroll, and then large-scale business structuring as well.
And industry-wise, for those who don't know Ariston Global, what sort of industries do you guys specialize in terms of supporting entrepreneurs?
When people ask what we do, we say, look, we take care of everything except the core operations. And if you understand business legislation and the business landscape, there's not much difference that differentiates businesses from that perspective. So, we've been lucky to have engaged with the likes of cattle farmers, wheat farmers, IT companies, engineers, pharmaceutical companies. So we've cut our teeth, across the board, across industries.
You've recently been featured in the Business Brief publication talking about the subject of cybersecurity and the human element. And you kind of set the context a little bit around, large financial services institutions are currently grappling with cybersecurity issues. And it prompted the question, if you've got a small business, you don't have the same budget to be able to hire engineers, cybersecurity specialists, etc. And then it starts to kind of segue into this discussion around the human element. Maybe you can just unpack a little bit about what you were trying to convey in that article and what the main thrust of that article was.
Sure. If we look at technology, it's pervasive in, all aspects of our lives, be it personal and business, right? And particularly in business, it's an enabler to us achieving our various objectives. It's improving productivity. It's opening up markets. So we're very much dependent on our technology. The challenge with it is now that it's opening us up to risks of fraud and cybercrime and so on. As much as large organizations have, like you said, the infrastructure, the chief information officer, the chief technology officer, they have access to the best available technology to secure the environments, even they are not protected. So as small business, we are just as vulnerable, if not more, because we don't have access, to all these fancy tools and large employee bodies within the technology space. The point is that while it's important to make sure your architecture is safe and secure, it's very much like your home. You can lock your doors and windows, put your alarm on, but if someone comes knocking at the front door and you open it, you're exposing yourself to risk if you don't verify who it is. The same thing with cybersecurity. Our weakest link, once we've done everything from a process and technology perspective, is our people. The message underlying that is, yes, put the technology in place, make sure the processes are there and adequate, but make sure you have the right people in the right places with the right knowledge and risk awareness to make sure they don't compromise the system.
If we look at your own client base, you've spoken everything from cattle farmers through to manufacturers, technology businesses, etc. What's the message you're getting from them in terms of the impact of cybersecurity risk on their business and how are they mitigating some of these risks?
Everyone's concerned, naturally. When you're seeing large companies being defrauded and being compromised, you start asking yourself, okay, am I applying the same duty of care with my employee and customer information as I expect all these organizations to do? It's the reputational risk, it's the financial risk of being compromised. People are genuinely concerned. However, the challenge is that they don't necessarily know where to start and what to do. Because let's be honest, our education system is that we get trained to be subject matter experts in a particular field. And when we go out and become entrepreneurs, we thrive in that environment, right? But because of complexity, you actually need to be a jack of all trades. So clients are, okay, what are my risks? How do we do this risk assessment? How do we mitigate these risks or take the necessary precautions? And that's top of mind for them.
And at a practical level, I mean, you mentioned financial risk. Are you seeing an uptake in things like cybersecurity, insurance, and that kind of thing across clients? And is it becoming something that's appearing more and more on these risk registers?
Look, the insurance part is about transferring the risk. And it's secondary. I think a lot of companies are more interested in how do we take preventative measures? How do we comply with the legislation in terms of POPI and PIA? How do we make sure our information is encrypted, that we have the right policy and procedures in place, that our employees are trained? And then as a secondary measure, do we have the right insurances in place to take care of? Because it's not just about signing up for insurance policy. Even then, you're going to have to prove that you put the right systems and processes in place, that you trained your staff, that you did everything reasonable to mitigate the risk.
And lastly, it brings us to the question, I mean, you're talking about your staff engagement, you're talking about your risk mitigation strategies as well. How important is it to bring in or have an external set of eyes that can look at your systems and processes and say, here's the best way to approach this business problem?
I think and I hope I'm not being biased here, but I see the value in it, and I think it's critical. We often use the example of, being on a battlefield. If you on the battlefield and you've got all this fire around you and things that trying to unalive you and you're just trying to do the best you can, it's difficult to get a bird's eye view of what's happening. But if you had someone on a mountain range above, in some sort of aircraft looking down who could assess without threat, make rational decisions, objectively understand what's going on, look for solutions and ways out, it makes a massive difference. That's somewhere where we've thrived. We've managed to obviously depersonalize ourselves from the context. We ourselves use consultants, have them depersonalized and take a big picture view in terms of what is going on and what is the best possible solution. Because often when you're in the middle of it, it's a knee-jerk reaction. And it's not necessarily the best possible solution. So I think it's critical getting that second set of eyes or an external view in terms of the challenges.
Suran, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for joining us on the Meet the Management podcast and looking forward to future discussions on the subject of cybersecurity and the human element.